What's up, folks? Welcome back to Tactical Tortoise. My name is Trevi, and today we're going to be talking about some first impressions about 10th edition and potential changes that could be upcoming to the game. So this past weekend, we got basically the soft rollout of 10th edition proper. We have all the core rules, all the missions, points values, and indexes for every single faction in the game. So outside things like the GT packet and some other alternative formats, we have every rule that we need to play the new edition of 40k. So reviews are in, and to put it lightly, they are mixed. Players are reporting mixed feelings about the rules so far, with wild imbalance between indexes, problems with the core rules, alongside the new terrain rules, changing how line of sight and cover works, making cover much easier to obtain than it ever was in previous editions of the game. Not everyone has been happy with the rollout. This was actually originally just going to be a first impressions video because I did spend all weekend playing games over on my Twitch channel. VODs for my games are going to be going up over on my replay channel over the course of the rest of the week, so if you want to see the games that I played, you can go drop a subscribe over there. So I was going to drop some thoughts about my first couple of games, some tier lists and stuff like that, but the rumor is currently that we are going to be seeing another errata to these indexes based on the first 5 days of feedback from the player base. Allegedly, this update is coming Wednesday. We saw this effectively happen with the Deathwatch index. As soon as the Deathwatch index was dropped, players realized the broken interaction between the Hellfire round stratagem and the massive devastating wounds weapons that Deathwatch armies and Space Marine armies in general can source, and allowed them to kill most infantry and monsters in the game pretty trivially. That was repaired incredibly quickly by Games Workshop, and it's sounding like they're preparing to do something similar. Now, from what I've heard, this is going to be focusing on indexes, and specifically the top indexes in the game. I don't know if we're going to see any changes to the bottom indexes, and as always, this being a rumor, there is a grain of salt here. But I find it prudent to wait until Wednesday to reserve any final judgment to the release date of the game or any tier list rankings. So what are we looking at potentially changing? I think specifically Space Marines and Eldari are going to be on the chopping block. Space Marines' Oath of Moment army ability, alongside the incredible efficiency of their indirect fire, makes them incredibly oppressive to deal with units like Desolators and Whirlwinds being incredibly cheap to include, and Oath of Moment being targeted anywhere on the board, you can dump enormous numbers of strength 4 shots from those Desolators, ignoring cover, ignoring the indirect fire penalty, and Whirlwind shots that are higher strength and multi-damage, all of them with full rerolls to both hit and wound, which makes them incredibly efficient. Even when you get into line of sight, units like Sternguard veterans with devastating wound rifles and heavier tanks like Gladiator Lancers or Vindicators will just pick you up very quickly, not to mention the fact that the Desolators basically have las cannons strapped to their missile launchers as well, so those guys are still going to put in some work. Eldari, on the other hand, are focused on the interaction between the Strands of Fate mechanic and Devastating Wounds. They have an enormous number of Devastating Wounds D-weapons, and all of those are able to automatically trigger that Devastating Wounds thanks to Strands of Fate. That means that these big 2d6 or d6 plus 2 damage weapons are converting automatically into mortal wounds, basically regardless of what they're shooting at. Combined with the incredible efficiency and resilience of units like Wraith Knights and Wraith Guard, Eldar armies can be extremely resilient and difficult to interact with. Their Overwatch is incredibly strong thanks to Strands of Fate, and units like Wraith Guard can react to fire when targeted by attacks both in melee and ranged, alongside the ridiculous efficiency of their shooting thanks to their unparalleled foresight detachment ability, which makes even their generic guns hyper effective, and the fact that Eldar have some absolutely ludicrously cheap units. They are clearly the top faction in the game. I have a sneaking suspicion that the army abilities for both of these factions are probably gonna get a look at. Now, whether or not we see changes to the bottom factions of the game, factions like Sisters of Battle, Adeptus Mechanicus, Death Guard, and Leagues of Votann, I don't know. These factions just seem dead on arrival. They have very anti-synergistic abilities, high points values, and poor stat lines, and it's just kind of baffling how they released in this state. Now, like I said before, take this news with a grain of salt. I hope that we see updates like this that occur rapidly in the first few weeks of the edition, because the release date of the indexes is frankly unacceptable. The difference in power level between the top factions in the game like Eldar that are far and above the level of damage output that they saw even in 9th edition versus factions like Leagues of Votann or Adeptus Mechanicus, which have trouble hitting the broadside of a barn with even their more elite troops, is absolutely astronomical, and a lot of work needs to get done to pull those back in into line. Whether or not we also see changes to the core rules that I mentioned earlier that makes the edition highly survivable and it's kind of difficult to play, I don't know, but we'll just have to wait and see. I sincerely hope that these rumors are true, and I hope that we see some pretty rapid updates to the game, and if we do, we could actually see 40K be brought back into line in a slightly healthier spot. So anyway, that's basically all I have to say for today. Stay tuned for Wednesday. We'll see if we get any updates to the game. I'm crossing my fingers. Until then, I would maybe take people's opinions on the game with a grain of salt. The release date is very bad, it's highly unbalanced, and it's a little bit awkward, but hopefully it can get better. Stay tuned for a return to regular content over the next few days. We're going to talk about some rules and some interactions in 10th edition that you can use to give yourself an edge in your games. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of the video. Thanks everyone who supports the channel, either over on Patreon at patreon.com/TacticalTortoise, YouTube channel members, and Twitch subscribers. All you people are great, and I love you. Remember to keep it classy, folks, and have happy wargaming.